Hey, has anybody heard or seen or read about the Robinhood GameStop Reddit commotion that's been going on this week? And raise your hand if you've heard about anything about GameStop this week or Reddit or yes. So a lot of interesting story coming up here. I'm not going to get into it. I don't understand Wall Street. I mean, I don't understand short sales and short stops and how all of those things work and hedge funds. And I've never really been on Reddit before. So Reddit, GameStop, Wall Street, hedge funds, an app called Robinhood, which kind of makes you think they're going to steal from the rich and give to the poor, but it's not that simple. It's a big story here, but I just want to read a little one-person story that's coming out of this to kind of help us understand it if you've heard about it. And if you haven't heard about it, this will kind of give you a microcosm of what's going on here. A Missouri dad made a recent investment of $4,500 into stocks through the app Robinhood, and shortly after, one of his investments, GameStop, skyrocketed. This happened after an army of traders on Reddit bought up the stock to raise the price of GameStop. AJ Vanover, the dad, makes $35,000 a year, but he's now a millionaire, at least on paper. Vanover has yet to sell his stocks, making his $1 million earnings unofficial. I want to make more money, and I feel confident it's going up. I might see how far it goes now, Vanover said. Vanover and the online army of amateur investors he's a part of have rocked Wall Street by buying up GameStop and other shares like AMC Theaters, BlackBerry, and Macy's, and big hedge funds who are betting against those stocks lost billions. I found this an interesting story. I mean, even Sean and I were watching one morning, Good Morning America, and they were talking about it like this was a bad thing. I'm like, why are they bashing these guys who are just getting rich, doing the same thing that hedge funds do, getting rich? It was a weird thing for me to watch this on the news. I'm like, why are these news anchors against these people who are like, this is so weird? But they all have someone giving them pieces of their story they need to highlight. What's going on here? Well, it's a mixed bag of gambling, of greed, of anger. It's kind of a cool story because it's David versus Goliath. It's all mixed in together. But the concern for me, for Christians, is how many might salivate about investing $4,500 and then getting $1 million. One of the things I read when I read this story about this dad is, hey, 35 grand a year, maybe he's married and his wife does something, she makes the same or more. Maybe they have $4,500 laying around. For me, I'm like, oh, $4,500. That's a lot to invest in Robinhood, doing some things that I'm guessing he doesn't have a lot of background in doing. Where did that money come from? Where was it supposed to go? Well, let me try this. I have $4,500 that's supposed to go here, but why don't I put it here instead? What did the story say there? From 4,500 to $1 million. But the guy said, I want to make more money. Think about that. If someone gave you $4,500 and you invest and you made $1 million, would you be like, just let it ride? Let's see how far it goes. It's dangerous thinking. I don't know about you, but there's a saying that says money talks. You ever heard that saying before? Money talks. Money talks, and what I usually hear mine saying to me is goodbye. That's how money usually talks to me. So I don't know about you, but more money can sound good. But in Luke chapter 12 and verse 15, Jesus warns about wanting more. Right. He says, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. But that's not what our culture teaches us. Right. Every day you're bombarded. Those free apps that you might have, those advertisements that come across those ads about in-app purchases. Every website that you think is free has advertisements clicking at it. The worst thing is they know exactly what you really want because they've seen what you did on Amazon on your website. They have that information. And so they're bombarding you with the things that you want and you secretly desire. And they're saying you can have it. You need it. And what do advertisements say? All new. It's improved, better than ever. You need it. And you deserve it. Hey, you know what I'm talking about? If you're someone who's on social media, especially, I'm not on a lot of social media, but on Facebook, I'll find that if me and Shyla have talked about, man, we should really think about doing this with the house, invariably, and I don't know how, even before I like Amazon or start trying to budget for it, that thing is on Facebook telling me someone sells it and they want to sell it to me. I don't know how that happens, but Shyla hates that. That's right. What do people with new look like? When someone is wearing that new jacket, they're smiling. They look more healthy than you. They look happier than you. You buy this new thing, this improved thing, your dreams for the good life, your best life are going to be true. But you've bought some of these new things before, at least one of them, and what happens? The newness wears off. Yeah. If you live in upstate New York, the car gets rusty. The clothes wear out. The batteries die. The newer, better, faster electronics become obsolete within months. And you got to get the newest, and you need it. And then what happens? The cycle starts all over again. We have to get the new thing to be happy. The truth of the matter is Americans are addicted to spending. The biggest problem with personal finances is spending more than we earn. So it's not just the spending, but so many spend more than they earn. Yeah. But how can a person spend more than they actually have? Well, it's easy, right? Credit cards. Oh, yeah. And if one credit card is maxed out, as long as you've been making the minimum payment, your credit score still looks pretty good. And who's sending you more information about wanting to give you more money that you don't have? Another credit card company. Some people have great credit scores because they're floating like 4 different credit cards and making the payments on it and still getting a new credit card. Or that little shuffle where, man, I've got money on this credit card, but man, that's a lot. I can't pay it off. The interest is going to come due. But someone else said, wow, you got good credit. How about a 0% credit card for only 3%? And you can float credit debt for a long time. Hey, I've been on that carousel before. People borrow, even if you're doing, well, if you have a credit card with credit card debt, someone else says, we will give you a loan so you can pay off your credit card debt. We'll give you some more debt to pay off the debt that you already have. The total consumer debt in 2020 of American households was $14.35 trillion. That's not the government, that's us. That includes things like mortgages, student loans, and credit cards. The personal credit card debt carried by the average person who has a credit card is about $7,000. $7,000. A lot of people's credit card debt continues to grow even if they stop using them. I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to keep making the minimum regular payment until it's paid off because we don't understand how interest works. If you had a $10,000 debt on your credit card at 18% interest, I'm not going to do all the numbers, but then you said, yeah, I'm going to make all the minimum payments. If you had 10,000 at the beginning of the year, you would have over 11,000 at the end of the year, even if you continued making the minimum payments. That's a challenge. That is the world that's around us. And if we're not careful, it seeps into us, and we got to pay attention with it. That's the challenge. Let's talk about part of the solution. Of course, the Bible actually says a great deal of things. There's a lot of principles about finances, but this morning, we're between some things. Next Sunday, we're going to have an upstate worship service. We're going to have Binghamton, Rochester, and Albany with us. Jim Rimple is going to preach. It's going to be a fun time. And so this morning I thought, well, we finished our Life of Patriot series. Let me do something a little bit more practical. So this morning, the title of the sermon is Waste Not, Want Not. A little about spiritual stewardship. In 1 Corinthians chapter 4, Paul tells disciples that our thinking about possessions is different. 1 Corinthians 4:7 says, for who makes you different from anyone else? What do you have that you did not receive? And if you did receive it, why do you boast as though you did not? Everything disciples have, we understand is from God. Psalm chapter 24 and verse 1 says, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Nothing you have does not belong to God, even if your name is on the title or the deed. Everything belongs to God. If we're going to learn spiritual financial principles, we have to first understand everything is God. God owns it. The most we do is we get to steward it for a little while. Now, some of us would like to steward just a little bit more of it, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But God owns it. If we're earning, no matter what you're earning, God gives us the ability to earn and to live and to provide for ourselves. Money, possessions, things have to be kept in their proper perspective. They're all God's. We can have some of it, some of what's God's, and we can steward it. God is God, not the things that we're allowed to steward. I want to give us 2 words to focus on this morning that I believe will help us to be great stewards in 2021. 2 words to help us waste not, want not. The first word is contentment. Amen. The first word is contentment. The second word is containment. Let's look at 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. 1 Timothy 6, 6 through 8. This verse really puts contentment in proper perspective. But godliness with contentment, so they go together, godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we'll be content with that. Just food and clothing. That verse gets right down to the nitty-gritty, don't it? Yeah. Life, Paul says here, is a journey from one moment of nakedness and nothingness and poverty to another moment of nakedness and nothing. You didn't bring anything in, and you ain't taking nothing out. Doesn't that say something about how we should value things? Mm-hmm. If the simple things we need are supposed to be the most important things, shouldn't we be content with that? We didn't bring anything in. We're not bringing anything out. What does it matter what we have in between? Not nearly as much. The question, though, is will we really be content with that? Right. Can we really be content with that? Someone wrote, our enemy is not possessions, but excess. Our battle cry is not nothing, but enough. We have to guard against excess, and we have to be content. We have to know when to say enough. I think that's part of the challenge. Yeah. Because it'd be one thing if God said, you can't have anything. You have to live in monasteries, and you have to only wear brown robes and these funny looking sandals, and that's all no TVs. And if you have a TV, this is the only kind of TV that you can have. You can't have triple ply toilet paper. You can only have the little 1-ply toilet paper, not the kind that the bears use, but you can only have this one kind. So saith the Lord. I think that would be great if God told us everything we could have and how to have it. It might be difficult, but at least it will be clear and simple. We wouldn't have to think. We wouldn't have to struggle. We wouldn't have to examine our hearts. But we're not forbidden by God to have things. God says we can have them, but we can't love them. We can't amass them. We can't put our trust in them. We can't be discontent all the time about all that God has given us. And that's where things get really tricky. We can possess things, but they must not possess us. Amen. God says in Hebrews, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Not about things, but about the Lord. In Hebrews chapter 13, verses 5 and 6. The key to contentment is our relationship, our reliance, our heartfelt worship of God above anything else. God is our greatest hope and our greatest possessions. He's promised, I will be with you. I will help you.
Yeah.
So if we really invest ourselves fully in godliness, devotion, that's godliness, devotion to the giver of all, the sustainer of all. We want to be like him and think like him. And we couple that with contentment, then money and possessions will be less of a danger for us. But if we don't focus on godliness and contentment, we become targets of Satan. In 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 9 through 10, Paul says this is the tragic result of getting those concepts twisted.
Yeah.
Instead of possessing possessions, being possessed by possessions. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 9 through 10, people who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great scripture. There's nothing wrong with being rich, but if your desire, if your want is to get rich, be careful.
Right.
One of the most often misquoted passages in the Bible, the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Money is not the root. Evil comes out of men's own hearts, Jesus says in Mark chapter 7. God doesn't want us to end up in grief and destruction. And so Jesus warns us about desiring more, about greed, which is really gambling at its core. Godliness and contentment are our preservation and our protection. Godliness and contentment are the sword and the shield in battling for spiritual finances. If we want to waste not, want not, we must begin with contentment, godliness and contentment.
Amen.
The second word is containment. Containment, because you guys know I like alliteration. Containment. People who are most likely to waste not, want not, are those who manage their money by design and not by default.
Right.
They have a plan for their spending and they follow through with that plan every month.
Yeah.
They know what's coming in and they know what's going out. And they make wise and spiritual choices all along the way. And you know what? They often will get advice from people they think know a little bit more than them about finances. Have you ever heard people say, I just don't know where my money goes? I'm at the end of my money before I'm at the end of the month.
Yeah.
You know, too many people don't know because they don't look. And they don't look because they don't want to know. Bringing containment to our spending means we have to really look at how much we have actually coming in and track what we're actually spending on, and then estimate what we will have and need for future spending. It takes discipline and organization and patience and consistent work. And those are things that Americans don't like. We don't want to be told that diet is 80% of losing weight. We want a pill to help us lose weight, or we'll go to the gym for 5 hours and still eat however we want because those things are so delicious. We don't want that. We don't want to save. We want to spend. Saving is hard. Saving means putting off gratification until later. We don't want to be disciplined and organized. We don't want to be patient. We want it now. Bringing containment to our money management, spiritual finances, requires that we live by that hated word, a budget. We're going to be godly and we're going to be content, but we're going to have a plan that helps us. One person described the function of a budget as telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. That's Dave Ramsey. He said that many times. A budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And it doesn't matter if you make thousands of dollars a year or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. A budget is an important step towards bringing money under control rather than be controlled by it. Hey, I've been there. Like, you can't squeeze money from a rock. I don't have any more money to give. I'm doing my best with my money, but really we have to ask, are we? And if you are, awesome. Keep doing it. Keep being content. But P.T. Barnum once said that money is a terrible master, but an excellent servant. Money's a terrible master, but it's an excellent servant.
That's awesome.
I know finances can be difficult. I've shared many times. I grew up in a single wide trailer. We had food stamps. We didn't have WIC when I was growing up. You had a tub of peanut butter, no name brand, and you had a block of butter and a block of cheese, and you may do it and some kind of pork product. I don't know what was in all of it. Maybe it was the spam originator. I'm not sure. I didn't grow up with much thinking about finances, except we didn't have anything. But we must have had something because my parents had jobs. Where was all the money? I don't know. I wasn't taught that. Maybe in your high school, you had a personal finance class and you took that and they taught you how to budget and you just decided, that wasn't important. I don't need it. But most people don't. Maybe you took a personal finance class in college and everything stuck. Maybe you're different from 99.9% of all of the other people in America that don't know how to use their finances and they know how to budget. They just don't know how to keep the budget, which tends to be the hard thing. And I don't know about you, but I'm old enough to remember when you either had cash or you had a check. No one had credit cards. And then credit cards got out of hand. And now you don't even have the checkbook. Remember the checkbook? You had to keep the balance and you had to reconcile. We didn't even get taught that in school, right? You had to keep the balance and reconcile it. What did we spend? Now with a debit card, who knows what they spent or where they spent it or how they spent it? I don't know how you keep up with that. That makes budgeting more difficult. So it's challenging. I shared that just a little bit over a year ago, me and Shyla started we started using a software, and we started watching this YouTuber who was frugal. He wasn't encouraging people to spend nothing, but more like think about what you spend and what you spend it on and how you spend it. And he was using this same tool. So we started using this thing, and it was amazing because when I left graduate school to go back on staff in Tampa, believe it or not, being a minister is not one of the higher paying jobs in the world. And so it was me and Shyla, and didn't have a high paying job. Matter of fact, I remember we were pretty much known. If you came to our house, you were probably going to get rice and beans and probably grilled chicken. That's as fancy as we got. We were known for rice and beans and chicken. That's what you get at the Smiths. People liked it. I'm glad they liked it because that was our budget. We had 2 kids and a mortgage. And then we moved to Syracuse. I had the bright idea of, hey, let's keep that house and rent it because it's in Florida. And if something's going to go crazy financially, that thing could go through the roof. And then the second year we had our house in Tampa, there was a flood caused by a hurricane, and we had to pay to get all the flooring redone. And so on our credit card that we already had $3,000 or $4,000, we had to add $6,000 more dollars because I did not know how to be a good businessman. Landlording is businessing, and I never had any training in businessing. And I'm so excited because since last August, or not last August, August before last, to now, we've been wrestling with how to pay that down and it's made us a lot more intentional. And so I was really excited in January. We paid all of our credit card debt off. We didn't have any interest because I did the juggling thing with the 0%. Man, it was a struggle. You know what I'm most excited about? Last year, we gave more to special missions than we've ever given before. Let me say that again. We paid off $10,000 in credit card debt, but we gave more to special missions than we've ever given before. Nothing magical happened to us. I do not have a rich uncle. I'm not going to there's not some surprise waiting for me anywhere financially. God's given me everything. I'm content with what I have. I'm just, some people get, they're going to inherit this or that. And so sometimes people are gambling their finances by what they might have in the future. That's a dangerous place to go. I would not do that. We need to be content with what we have. But I'm just saying, there's no special rainbow is going to show up next to my house with extra money. It's been hard. The first month that we decided to do this budget and watch this video guide, me and Shiloh put aside an hour every Monday just to say, this is what we have coming in. This is what we have going out, but not right now, but all year. The life insurance. If you're an adult with kids at home, you need to have life insurance. All these kinds of different things so we can take care of our life and our family. But what's going out all year? We get it's strange for me here because we get the water bill twice a year. Okay, we got to put aside just a little bit up to here, and then we got to keep up with it. And so that was 4 weeks of Mondays just for an hour. And then after that, it's every 2 weeks of talking. Man, me and Shiloh have had some hard discussions. We strangely enough, if you're married, we think differently about finances, both of us. I'm more stingy, and she's like, "Whoa, let's give some money here. Let's do this thing. Let's do this." She's more. I want to be generous, but I'm like, "Do we have money to be generous?" And she's like, "We need to make money to be generous." Our budget has changed. Even over the last year, we've thought about these kind of things. It's been hard. We've had arguments. We've both been sad. We've learned that we have to pray a lot before we sit down and do our budget. Hey, somewhere out there, there's a couple that has the rainbows and the birds around them, and everything they talk about is never ends in an argument, and it's always the most spiritual all the time. That's not me and Shiloh. We're two different people trying to do the same thing. And the place you can find some of the most differences is with finances if you're a married person. But we learned how to contain, and it has really helped us. Now, in the past, me and Shiloh have had these financial breakthroughs. Like, we've paid off things before. And then Shiloh was just reminding me this morning, generally when we paid off things before, some big ticket thing comes up, like the washing machine broke. And so what we've done in the past is we didn't really have a budget, but we had saved a bunch of money. And so we'll throw all the savings there, and then another thing catches up with you and trips you up. And she was just sharing on Friday, we went to the opening of the Salt City Market, which was awesome. And I got to see Tim and Chanel. And then when we left, I turned on my windshield wiper, and I had a ticket on my car because I thought that the parking was free down there. And she was telling me this more like, "Honey, I was so proud of you. Like, you weren't upset with yourself." Usually, and I get really upset with myself if I get a parking ticket. "Honey, you weren't upset. You were fine." Just there's so much peace when you know what's coming in, what's going out, and what you can afford. When you have we have an emergency fund, and we have an unexpected spending fund, and they're two different things. So I could pay for the parking ticket with that. Jesus wants us to have peace even in our finances. He even emphasizes stewardship in his teaching. In Luke chapter 16 and verse 10, Jesus says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." It's not how much you have, it's how good a job do you do stewarding things. Whoever is dishonest with very little, who's not honest with how much is coming in and going out, and whoever's dishonest with very little also will be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? That's kind of a scripture that kind of stabs you. If you haven't been trustworthy with worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? If you haven't been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? And then he comes in, no one can serve two masters. When you've wanted to get rich and it's tripped you up, it's hurt you. No one can serve two masters. Either he'll hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Budgeting is one way of exercising faithful stewardship, of being able to waste not, want not. You know what's coming in, so you're not going to waste anything because you know exactly where it's supposed to go. And so you're ready for the days ahead, like the Proverbs 31 woman. Let me encourage you, if you're not presently working with a budget, how can you get started? How can you start with where you are and work towards the future? I guarantee you can do it with godliness and contentment, with just knowing where you really are, what's really coming in and what's really going out. There's only two things you need for budgeting: when you know your net income and you know your total expenses for each month, or really your total expenses, because sometimes you have quarterly or annually. And then you need to know that when your expenses are greater than your income, there's a problem, right? I'm a genius. When you're spending more than you're earning, there's a problem. I'm not that smart. What can we do then when our expenses exceed our income? There's only a couple things you can do. You can either increase your income or find a way to decrease your expenses. Now, both of those have some dangers if you're not being godly with contentment.
Right.
A dangerous place that some people go here is the first thing they cut is giving to God. The first thing I'll cut down on is how much money I'm giving to God before any other cut. That's just a reality. That doesn't necessarily reflect what you can cut as much as your heart. I'm not saying that there's never a time you should decrease the amount of your giving, or ever a time that you should not give very much to special mission. I'm not saying that. But if that's the first place you look to cut, that's dangerous. That's dangerous for your heart. Another danger is to get a second income in the way of a second job. So you can't increase your income at your current job, so you get a second job, but that second job limits time with family if you're married. It limits fellowship, and you don't have a plan to supplement your fellowship if you have to miss a Wednesday evening or a Sunday morning. Let me say that more clearly. There is absolutely zero wrong with the second job. But if your faith doesn't let you go in with, hey, I got to have Wednesday evenings and Sunday mornings off, at least, second job could be a danger for you. It's not about a second job. It's about your heart.
Right.
If you're so desperate for more money that you're willing to give up meeting together, that's a problem. Not the second job. It's the priorities in our hearts.
Yeah.
And too often, those are the things that got us in that place in the first place. It's about spiritual finances, not better finances. Tightening the belt for our expenses can be hard, but it's necessary when expenses are greater than income. There are hundreds and hundreds of practicals that could be inserted here. Like, if you're buying a car, should it be a new car or a used car? Hey, that's up to you. This is your question for your heart and your stewardship. And even if you buy a used car, should I get a used Toyota or should I get a used Infiniti? You know, Infiniti is part of the Toyota brand and Acura is part of the Honda brand, or vice versa. I don't know much about cars. You can ask Justin maybe later. If it's going to be a Honda, should I get the Honda Civic or the Honda Accord or the Honda CRV or the Honda Passport? These are hard questions. This is not about what you should or shouldn't do.
Right.
It's about your heart. Hey, it's not about if we eat out. Sometimes it's should we eat out. My most favorite Christmas gifts ever were this year. I got some popcorn seasonings. I've gotten into a thing where I like popcorn. Mario got me popcorn. It was awesome. Juan got me this cool sweater. But then Shyla got me an Instant Pot. We have been cooking, like I made beef and broccoli. Oh, Justin says, should I even eat? I don't think that's a part of it. Although I would say this, there's evidence since Justin said, there's evidence from early Christianity that people who were slaves would not eat 1 or 2 days so they could have an amount to give to the Lord. That's convicting. Yeah. The Spirit must have put it on Justin to say that.
Yeah.
Mondays, like this Monday, I'm making chicken korma. Maybe it's a time, during coronavirus time that you learn how to make some cool dish, and that's what you do every week instead of going out to eat. I don't know. I'm not saying don't go out to eat. What I'm asking is expenses, income, and heart, because Jesus wants stewardship. All of our different choices represent different costs. Making better choices will typically mean living within our means, at least getting there. But it also could mean having more to share with others. It can mean giving more to save souls. I love our special missions giving. Everyone does such an incredible job. Yeah. But maybe we could not just encourage Suriname, but maybe we could get off the dole with they call it. We were talking to some English friends yesterday. They call it the dole. Maybe we could stop relying on the New York City church for our church here and having staff here in Syracuse. I don't know. Lots of stuff could happen. Then New York City could give somewhere else. Hey, we often do lessons about giving and about special missions. This is just for us. We need to be good stewards with our finances, and the special missions and the giving take care of themselves. Materialism is a challenge for all of us because we live in a material world, according to Madonna, right? That was the old song. It just always sticks in there. Materialism is difficult, not just for the rich, but for all of us. Even people who don't have much can fall into the trap of believing that we would be happier if we just had a little bit more.
That's right. Yeah.
Or I don't have much, so I deserve X or Y. And it can be dangerous. Contentment is the key for the rich and the poor. And containment is the key for the rich and the poor and everyone in between, to put God's money at the best use for God's purposes in our lives. Let's keep Jesus' words clearly in our minds. We just spoke about them, so I'm going to talk about Sermon on the Mount stuff all through the year. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. There's a church in Italy, the Cathedral of Milan, and over the doors, there's some carvings with a powerful message. They have a triple doorway. And in the door on the left, there's a wreath of roses with the words, "All that which pleases is but for a moment." And over the right door is a cross with the words, "All that which troubles is but for a moment." But over the center door are the words, "That only is important, which is eternal."
Amen.
If you already have a budget, I'd encourage you to go home and review it. If you already have a budget, look at life with contentment and keep containment in mind. If you don't have a budget, talk with someone about it. I remember specifically in Tampa having this thought with some brothers. Probably more of us would be open to letting anyone look at our web browser or our phone browser to help us with our purity than we would be to opening up our budget and our finances to getting help with our finances. People are more embarrassed about their finances than they are their personal purity. Sometimes we need help. If you don't have a budget, or if you have a budget, but you just haven't figured out what is the Holy Spirit knack to being disciplined enough to stick to the budget, talk about it and get some help. Talk about it and get some help. Maybe it's a discipling time with someone and say, "Hey, do you know about this?" "No." "Well, let's go find someone who does." If you're a couple, talk to another couple. Hey, me and Shiloh are very different on some of these things. We've had to talk about it a lot and talk about some of them with other couples. May God help us to be faithful stewards who lay up treasures in heaven so our hearts and our treasure can be in the right place. Brothers and sisters, let's be giving and have a great time of fellowship together.